This is The Flood. I'm checking it out because one of my viewers, Wearing Orb, suggested it. They'd played it on their stream, and they said that I might be interested in it too because I play a lot of weird indie games. Apparently, from what I can tell, it's artistic and it's short, and that is the ideal thing for me this week because I've actually got family coming into town later on this week, so I won't be able to be streaming for that entire weekend. So building up a bunch of videos in advance is good for me. And so if this is a really short, really sort of neat and fascinating game, that is right up my alley. So now the question is, what am I doing? Okay, so I've got a little boat, it looks like, in the lower right. And I'm using WASD to steer it. Okay, at first I couldn't tell if that little thrumming sound was the sound of my boat or if it was a part of the soundtrack. I think it's the sound of my boat. Awesome Twitch Dude says this is a nice art style, and yeah, I absolutely agree. Rachel Croson says, do you ever play another game and see something that you love and want to put it into State of Decay? It's not usually quite that cut and dried. It's not usually like I see one thing and I'm like, that thing is going to be lifted and placed in State of Decay. But absolutely, I mean, everyone who works in an artistic medium is constantly absorbing everything that they play, or everything that they watch, or everything that they participate in. And it kind of, it gets mixed into a slurry in your head, and that's what you draw from a lot of the time when you're doing your own work. So the text up there said it's not only the scenery you miss when you're going too fast. You notice my character is going pretty slow and making sure that I get a chance to see the scenery around me, which might just be the point of this game. It's weird. It feels like I'm piloting this boat through a sewer, practically. I mean, this looks like an absolute mess, but at the same time, it's gorgeous. It's an interesting... Oh, hey, some stairs. Does that mean can I get out? Let's see what happens if I go up to these stairs. And picking the speed at which your character moves is one of the most difficult decisions you ever make in game development because it just affects absolutely everything else. Okay, so the question is... See, there's this yellow door here. It makes me think I can go here, but... Oh, there we go. Wait, was that... My boat moved like that was a thing, like that was supposed to be here, but... maybe not. Maybe I'm just supposed to drive into that pipe. The thing I'm not seeing is a button allowing me to get out of the vehicle. I'm hitting space, I'm hitting enter, I'm hitting F. Yeah, maybe I can't get out of the boat. Maybe this staircase and door are not for me. Maybe I just need to keep moving. This does seem like it might be a game about a scenic drive. But yeah, it is interesting seeing this sort of juxtaposition of pleasant music, happiness, remarking about, pretty scenery, but also it feels like I'm in the wake of a disaster. Pardon me. So, Awesome Twitch Dude asks if I've seen anything in The Last of Us 2 that I'd want to add to State of Decay. All things flow naturally forward. I feel like I should be reading this text as I go. I am reading it silently in my head, but people keep asking me questions. Why do you keep asking me questions, audience? That's fine. So one thing that is interesting to me about The Last of Us 2 is, and just The Last of Us altogether, is the very different way that they approach scavenging. We, in State of Decay, we kind of make it pretty abstract. We don't try to depict each item in each position in the house, and have you sort of realistically be grabbing things off counters and stuff like that. Instead, we have this abstract thing where we've got containers that could contain anything, and the items only exist on an inventory menu instead of in the world. And there's a good reason for that, because placing those items so that they look natural in the environment, that's a big deal. And in The Last of Us, they very carefully choose what's going to be where you're going to see each thing, and it's because the entire experience, it's a very high production values narrative experience. It's very much on rails in a good way. When I say that, sometimes people say on rails pejoratively. The Last of Us 2, what's great about it, only works if it's on rails, and so it's a good thing that it's on rails. But in our game, we want the same map to very flexibly serve a lot of different purposes, and the same container needs to be able to contain a lot of different things. And so we can't set it up that way. But it is interesting watching, just basically what a different set of starting conditions. Like, they know they're making a very different game from what we're making. And that allows them to make these like very, kind of hyper-realistic choices where we have to make these abstract choices because we've got this big, broad systems-driven game and they've got this cinematic production values extravaganza. But when I look at stuff like that, I do I always think, could we do that in State of Decay? Could we just put stuff out on countertops that players could grab? And there's a lot of reasons, a lot of good technical reasons why we can't. Why, the other ambitions we have for the game mean that we have to treat it more abstractly. But I always stop and think about it anyway. When a game, like The Last of Us, is so close to us in they're really far away from us in some ways, but they're really close to us in other ways. It really makes I do think about it that way. Like, could we do this? Could we do that? Are there things about the way the character moves through the environment? Are the things about the way they open and unlock doors? Or is there something that we could do differently that would be satisfying? But honestly, like, it's actually more games like Grounded or Among Trees, or games that are closer to us genre-wise, that they're more likely to have elements that would actually want to learn directly from. Okay, so it looks like I just came up against a blockage, and then what? When you lose your way, you may find yourself. Huh. Interesting. So this game is pretty fascinating because it almost, sometimes people compare games to paintings. I've done that before too. Like, think when I was playing, what was the name of the Silence? I compared it a lot to a painting because of the way the art style looks. But in a lot of ways, it was also just it was an adventure game, like any adventure game, and it has a lot of the same elements of normal adventure games, including the big elaborate story, the puzzles to solve, the item puzzles, things like that. This game really it just kind of strips away everything. All you do is navigate this game, and you go through this pretty environment, you read a few kind of poetic words, and then you've had the experience, which is much more like walking through a museum and stopping in front of a painting, letting your eyes explore it a little bit, drawing some meaning from it, and then being done within a few minutes and moving on. So it's really interesting to see somebody take a game, which, there's been a lot of discussion going on my Twitter feed lately about how long games ought to be. And I find that to be a preposterous question because, every game is different, right? Finding the length that your game ought to be is actually a really big challenge, and there's not a single rule that determines what that should be. The Last of Us, I would expect that game to be about as long as a short season of television, for instance. It's probably going to be actually as long as a long season of television, which is intimidating for me because it's so emotionally taxing to play that game. It's hard for me to play it for long stretches. So yeah, but anyway, it wants to be a certain length. A game like XCOM 2, people mod that game to make it even longer. You want that to be just a really long, stretched out experience with a lot of repeated experiences along the way. A game like Slay the Spire, I can get through a single run of Slay the Spire really quickly. So it's a short game, but then you replay it a million times. And then there's a game like this where it would have a very different meaning if you'd actually tried to make a long, drawn out game out of this, where you're piloting a boat, down a river. If you actually did stop whenever you saw a staircase or a door. I mean, there's games like that. There's A Flame in the Flood, for instance, which is a lot like that, which is a very different experience from this. The experience that this creator, Andre Angelevic, something like that, the thing that this person wanted to create would not be well served by this game being longer than 5 minutes, and so they didn't make it longer than 5 minutes, and that's good. That people should feel free to do that. So this whole idea of how long should a game be, it's just a meaningless question. It's like saying I don't know, how large should a meal be? I don't know. Sometimes you want to have a snack. Sometimes you want to have a 5-course meal. They're just there's different things out there, and they should all be different. Like, how tall should a building be? I don't know. Sometimes it's a house, and sometimes it's a skyscraper. So anyway, I like this game. This is really cool, and it's free if you want to sort of drive through it yourself and experience it without me chattering over it the entire time, talking about unrelated subjects that happen to be brought up by my viewers. Then I think you should go download it. It's on Steam. It's really cool, and should go and have that experience. Anyway, I've cut off the sound because that's what's necessary to come and manipulate my screen here and put up an end screen for YouTube. And we'll go play something else because that was pleasantly short, and yeah, we've still got a whole evening ahead of us.